Welcome on in to the Friday Night 360 AZ Preview Show. Haley Stasiak and Jordan Ham bringing you all the previews of all the good action coming up on Friday night. We're going to have Arizona Varsity's Ralph Amsden as well as Ty Wisdom, Horizon head coach, on as our guest today. And then we're going to break down some of the stuff that we have seen so far in the season, some of the stuff we're still looking forward to as the second half of the season continues to get underway. Hard to believe that the month of October is here now. We are getting into that final stretch, which is, I know it seems like yesterday we were just talking about how it's already the halfway point of the season. Now we're past that and getting into October.
2 months away from essentially being done with the season. Just 5A and 6A are December 1st.
Absolutely crazy. So let's go ahead and get into our previews for this Friday's matchups. Let's start out with Seton Catholic at Arcadia. Seton Catholic 5-1. They've got a loss to a good Mesquite team, who Arcadia also has a loss to. Arcadia is 5-2. That loss to Mesquite and as well to Saguaro. In this matchup, I'm watching Seton quarterback Vincent Wallace. I saw Seton Catholic in the playoffs last year, and Vincent Wallace was one of those players that really stood out to me in that matchup. He has nearly 1,500 passing yards, 400 rushing yards, so a dual threat there. And then they also have a trio of senior receivers, Colton Christensen, Jacob Hansel, and Michael Kenny, that I'm watching there. Arcadia is a young team, and they've come out of the gates, and they've been able to get it done. Obviously, those two tough losses, that pretty big loss to Saguaro, and then this Mesquite team's kind of come up and been a shocker.
Mesquite started at 0-3, and they're now 4-3. So they've rattled off 4 straight wins.
Against some good teams.
They have a really good coaching staff. Ty Thompson, a young quarterback, but going to be kind of, I think, the next generation of those really good quarterbacks. And he's done a phenomenal job, especially in those wins. So definitely like not a loss to shake your head at for either team with this Mesquite team.
Definitely not. This is the game that I'm going to be going out to this week, so I'm excited to see Arcadia play. I know Arcadia is a team that we have talked a little bit about throughout this season, so getting to see them in live action, and then obviously the Seton Catholic team is a team to watch as well.
Yeah, and it's going to be key. Carrie Taylor created a lot of buzz coming into the season around this program, a program that probably didn't have a lot of buzz externally or internally, and they backed it up with wins to start the year. Now they're in a tough part of their schedule. You said that they're a young team. Now is the time for this coaching staff, which has a lot of college experience, to kind of get those guys to fight through the adversity. So I think this is a great test for them to make a statement in 4A against a really good Seton Catholic team.
Looking forward to that one on Friday night. Next up, Estrella Foothills at Peoria. Our genius behind the glass, Devin Henry, has given us some good stuff on Peoria throughout this year. The Panthers are a run-heavy team, so Estrella Foothills will need to figure out how to stop the run there. The Wolves are on the other side of that. They like the pass game. So this is going to be an interesting matchup on the west side.
Yeah, and Jacob Golden up front for Peoria. He's an offensive lineman committed to Boise State. He's been kind of the anchor of that offensive line. And we talked to Jose Lucero last week of Desert Edge about that crazy Hail Mary play that won them the game. Peoria was on the receiving end of that, so they're really close to being just on the cusp of really making a pretty good run here. But it again, we talked about it last week, just how many really good West Side teams there are, and it's just tough to navigate right now with so many good teams, and you have a team like Millennium who's kind of on the come up as well. So this should be a really fun game.
Desert Vista at Mountain Point. The Tukey Bowl is sure to bring it this year. Desert Vista 5-1, a loss to Highland ended their undefeated season. And then Mountain Point has losses to Pinnacle, Bingham, which is a top school in Utah, and Queen Creek. Things really clicked for them last week as they beat that unbeaten Highland team, took over for there. So the Pride needed that to get off to. They got off to that slow start. Really tough loss against Pinnacle, tough loss against Queen Creek. They went up to Utah and they were able to kind of battle with that top tier team, which kind of showed what they've got this year. But we talked last week about how Desert Vista is a young team, and I think this is going to be a test for the Thunder, and then a game that Mountain Point's going to need to win to carry this momentum that they've gotten from that loss or that win against Highland into this half of the season.
Totally. 2 of those 3 losses from Mountain Point by a combined 9 points.
They got it all there. They really do.
Yeah, and I like seeing the way they responded against Highland after a tough Queen Creek loss that I was at, and Mountain Point pretty much, they had that game all but wrapped up, but Devin Larson able to make a nice comeback. Queen Creek's a very good team, and you just never really know how teams are going to respond they responded with a 48-27 victory. Dominique Davis is a guy that you need to watch in this game. Big play capabilities. Nick Wallerstadt doesn't even need to, necessarily air it out to Dominique Davis. I saw him take a screen about 70 yards for a touchdown, and he's just good at kind of navigating his way through the secondary. So that one, Mountain Point is a run-heavy team. Two, Rich Welbrock traditionally has been a run-heavy coach, but when you add that wrinkle of Dominique Davis, that just completely opens up the offense for them.
Definitely, and then, like we said, this is the Tukey Bowl, so it's not a game either of these teams are taking lightly, and it's sure to be a good one with the caliber of talent both of these teams have. Last but not least, looking at these previews for Friday night, Casteel at Gilbert. Jordan, you saw Casteel Higley. What did you see out of the Colts last week?
I was super impressed with the way the Colts played in the trenches. We heard so much about, Casteel might have trouble jumping up to 5A with, they might get pushed around a little bit. Look, they have a ton of talent on this team. They have a ton of talent that's played a lot of varsity football, and they made a statement. This was their first statement win in 5A against a really good Higley team, and this offensive line went up against arguably the best defensive line in the state, and they kind of pushed them around a little bit at times, and they were able to put up a ton of points, through the run game. That kind of set the tone. We always hear about the passing game, and they have a great passing game, but you have Gunnar Cruz rush for 4 touchdowns. You have a mix of running backs that can really just make some really big plays. And then you have a guy like Zach Nelson, a guy like Brant Goodwin. If you get the ball in their hands and they get a little bit of space, they're going to make guys miss. It seems like it takes 4 or 5 guys to bring those receivers down. I think those are 2 slept-on receivers right now, recruiting-wise. And I just walked away really impressed with the way they handled business against Higley. And if they can play with that sort of intensity and that sort of discipline throughout, then I think they're a definite player in 5A.
You mentioned Zach Nelson. Be sure to check out the recruiting roundup with Brad Sesmat and Jason Jewell. They discussed how Nelson is kind of an under-recruited, under-the-radar player. How about on this Gilbert side? We've got kind of another good quarterback battle here.
Yeah. Gunnar Cruz on Casteel's side, Will Plummer of Gilbert. He has come in and just thrown all over the place. They have a ton of wide receivers that can go out and make plays. Again, this is a team that Derek Zellner has really kind of built up over the past couple of years and did a lot with Will's older brother, Jack Plummer, and they were able to kind of take that step. You didn't really know how it was. They had a pretty solid senior class moving on. You didn't know how they'd respond. They've responded really nicely, and at one point, a couple weeks ago, Will Plummer had the most yards in the nation. That's very impressive. So it's going to be a big test for this Casteel secondary. They were up to the challenge against Spencer Brash. Spencer still had a nice game, but they're going to need to bring that same sort of intensity against Will Plummer and Gilbert.
Lots of good action. We are in the heart of October getting into it, and we're heart of the region play as well. So coming up next, we'll have Horizon head coach Ty Wisdom. Keep it right here on the Friday Night 360 AZ Preview Show.